Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we're going to be discussing and reacting to Frank Seravalli's top 20 trade targets for this 2023 NHL season. Now, Frank Seravalli, one of the biggest insiders out there, has given us 20 names that he thinks could be traded this season, and especially towards the trade deadline. But what players do Frank Seravalli see actually getting dealt? What are the latest info surrounding them? And how likely are we to see trades with these players? Watch till the end for all of the picks and all the trade rumors. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of you guys aren't subscribed. So if you like hockey content, this channel is the place to be. But let's get right into it with Frank Seravalli and his new article, Trade Targets. Let the bidding begin on Vancouver Canucks Bo Horvat. Legendary Blackhawks Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews have also cracked the list of big-name players expected to attract major interest leading up to the March 3rd deadline. And there is, I've already looked through some of this, a lot of really good names here and a lot of unique names as well. But of course, from Frank Seravalli, as Erik Karlsson once famously said, the time is nigh. Well, it might not be nigh for Erik Karlsson in San Jose, but the NHL trade market is beginning to percolate in this most streaky season. U.S. Thanksgiving is the time-tested point for reflection for general managers. Gobble gobble. With nearly a quarter of the season gone, they now know that type of team they've built, but perhaps most importantly, they also know the ingredients they're missing. That means it's time for our first trade targets board of the 2023 season with an eye toward the March 3rd trade deadline. Here are 20 names in play or who will soon be. So a little bit of preview there, and we're only a few months away from that deadline happening, and we can already see a ton of trade rumors already starting to happen. But as you can see, number one on the trade target board is Bo Horvat, of course, with Vancouver. And when it comes to the scoop, Frank Seravalli says this: communication has been scarce between the Canucks and Horvat's camp, with the belief that contract talks broke off before training camp and have not yet resumed. Canucks president Jim Rutherford alluded to the idea that Horvat's sizzling start means the captain could be the catalyst for core reconstruction. The better he plays, the better return we can get for him, Rutherford said on Sportsnet 650 earlier this month. There's no shortage of teams interested in a top flight center, either as a rental or long-term fit. Colorado, Detroit, Boston, and Edmonton, to name a few. Those are some pretty interesting team names. Having Colorado, I think, is pretty likely. Boston is a pretty interesting fit. They already got a lot of centermen, but maybe we see a center go back to the Canucks. Detroit, I think, makes a lot of sense as well. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. But the Edmonton Oilers in a potential Bo Horvat trade, that would be wild. I'm not sure if Vancouver would want to trade him within the division, but Edmonton would be a pretty crazy place for him to go. But that's another team that can still have a lot of centers when they need to. So, I mean, he'd be great defensively on that team. That would be a huge add. But Edmonton with Bo Horvat would be pretty wild. Now let's go on to the second spot here where we have both Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, with him saying on Patrick Kane's case, as the calendar flips to December, expect the Blackhawks to begin initial conversation with Kane to gauge his interest in a trade. It's still early. Kane indicated in the summer that if he wanted to move at all, it would be closer to the deadline. Remember, Showtime holds all the cards with a full no move and full no trade clause. If you're looking for a potential style of deal in both managing it and potential return package, look back on how Claude Giroux reported Philadelphia last spring. And that is a great point with Giroux's exit, how graceful it was, and how it was obviously decided on both sides to be able to get that deal done. I would expect for Patrick Kane that to be the case, and Seravalli does bring up a great point with that. Then on the Jonathan Toews front, like Kane, Toews will determine his future with an identical contract and clause. They will also share the same agent in CAA Sports, Pat Brisson, who will be working very closely with Blackhawks GM Kyle Davidson as the process heats up. The difference is Kane has always been a sought-after commodity, a player who makes teams drool. Toews used to be there as a stingy, difficult to play against center and unshakable leader. He's gone back closer to that level than what we saw from him in 2019-20 before the pandemic, and that has everyone excited, including the Blackhawks. So both Kane and Toews are this high, and I think it kind of speaks to how well Toews has played that he can be third on a trade target board and be up this high. If you're going to be up this high, it means that you have a pretty good chance of being dealt. And considering his cap hit at $10.5 million, it just shows how much better he's been this year, that teams have a lot more confidence in potentially going after him. Then we got at number 4, Jakob Chychrun, and with Frank Seravalli, he says this about him: the Chychrun saga has dragged on for more than a calendar year now, with the player making his intentions for a trade well known. After Arizona first floated his name in discussions, he finally returned to the ice on November 21st, his first game since March 12th, after going wrist and ankle surgeries. His contract and costs certainly have teams salivating, but which player will they get? The 18 goal scorer from 2021 or more of his second pair blue liner? That will determine whether Arizona's high asking price will be met. And those injuries have definitely played a part in Chychrun's stay with the Arizona Coyotes, and of course with the health questions there, those are huge concerns. You know what I mean? Wrist surgeries, especially for a defenseman that has scored as many goals as he has. There are questions over whether he'll get back to that level. And to me, if he's healthy, there's no doubt about the player that he is. I still think when healthy, he's a top 15 defenseman in this league, especially on defense. But again, those worries are definitely concerning. But I do feel like if he maybe plays like a month with the Coyotes and is back at that level, then I can assume that a lot of teams would still be going after him and wouldn't have much problem doing so. Now let's go on to number 5. And next up is John Klingberg of the Anaheim Ducks. With the contract situation, of course, him getting 1 year, it is pretty interesting. And Seravalli says this. This was always the plan when Klingberg signed in Anaheim. Check out the fit, see how the season starts, and if things go sour, he'd be on the move as a flippable asset to the Ducks. It was a smart play for all sides when he lingered on the market. After he lingered on the market, he'll put $7 million in his pocket for this season, shoulder the security risk, and hope to cash in again next summer. It's been a mostly miserable start for all involved with the rebuilding Ducks. We have an idea where this is heading. Klingberg holds a full no trade until January 1st, while someone attempt to jump the market for a premium rental defenseman available. I mean, for me personally, I don't think Klingberg has been all that great this year, and on defense has been one of the worst players in the entire National Hockey League. But the thing is with Klingberg, obviously the offense is where he gets it, is where his bread and butter really lies. But I mean, it's still wild to me that he turned down that $50 million plus deal with Dallas just like a year ago, and how crazy things have gone. But he will definitely still get a lot of the deadline if the Ducks are going to end up trading for him. Now, this is the last name I saw, and this is the last name that I thought was absolutely wild. At number 6, Frank Seravalli has Timo Meier from the San Jose Sharks, and this is what he says about him. For all the buzz Erik Karlsson has generated, Meier is a way more likely Shark to be on the move. San Jose signed Tomas Hertl in a similar spot last season, but after yet another tough start, it's pretty clear the direction new GM Mike Grier wants to take this team. That means it's unlikely the Sharks sink more money into a new deal with Meier. He is one of the few assets they can move freely, with a gigantic qualifying offer due to him at the end of the season. Some teams may view and pursue him as a pending UFA instead of an RFA. If he's to be considered an RFA, his starting value in the market is considerably less than the Alex DeBrincat deal last summer. That is interesting to me with Meier, and the fact that he could be available with this Sharks team. I mean, obviously 18 points in 21 games. He's a player that I think on a contender could do massive things, at least a point per game rate, and be such a key play, such a great pace pusher and such a great player in all 3 zones. So we'll see what happens here. I think Meier should get a lot, and especially since he is a pending RFA, you do get a lot more security than him being a pending UFA. So that would obviously be taken into account, like of course Frank Seravalli mentions with the DeBrincat deal. We'll see what happens though. That's a trade deadline deal. He has a case to be made where he is maybe the best player available in a lot of ways, at least one of the best forwards, and especially with how he's played with San Jose this year. I mean, with this Sharks team, he's still got 18 points in 21 games. I think for almost any contender, they should be going after Timo Meier. Even teams that aren't in the race, having a pending RFA and being able to potentially lock him up long term, that would be huge for most teams around the league. But now let's go on to number 7. And next up, we got Anthony Duclair, interestingly, of course, with the Florida Panthers, and he has one more season at a $3 million AAV rate. With Seravalli, he says Duclair has an asterisk because he is a representative of a trade the Panthers must make in order to be cap compliant once he is healthy. Already skating, Duclair will be in range to return around Christmas from his July surgery to repair an Achilles tear. Right now, the Panthers are flying close to the sun with the cap, doing a nightly dance while playing with the minimum number of skaters. They've already had to play off a short bench once, and that may happen again. Since there is no one to send down, a trade is necessary, barring another injury, to make room to activate Duclair when he's ready. But he may not be the one who ultimately goes. So, interesting there that, again, Duclair is on this board, even though Seravalli is mentioning how it might not be him that actually goes away with Florida. But it seems like the Panthers will eventually have to make a move in some way, because obviously this situation with them is not working for the best. Now, at number 8, we got a pretty interesting defenseman here in Vladislav Gavrikov, with Seravalli saying everything has gone wrong in Columbus and the Blue Jackets have reached the proverbial "our pets' heads are falling off" stage. Injuries have mounted, structure has been lacking, and Gavrikov is sitting there as a nice potential trade chip. It seems recently re-signed Andrew Pecky is Gavrikov's ready replacement on the back end. Gavrikov is a strong defender, a true defense-first defenseman, and nearly every team can maneuver his cap hit. What does the package look like? The Blue Jackets received first and third round picks for David Savard in 2021. Gavrikov is probably a better player and definitely younger. I mean, that's the thing. I would say reputation-wise, Gavrikov isn't nearly at the Savard type of level, but I would say is better in this stage than Savard was then. But of course, Savard won a cup with Tampa, and he was a big part of that defense. So is Gavrikov on that same level? Will teams think of him on the same level? To me, I don't think he's had the greatest season this year, but nobody on Columbus has. So I could see teams still going after him, still lacking that potential. And as well, 2.8 million AAV. That's fine. You can definitely maneuver around that, like Frank said. So I would not be too concerned, and I think Columbus could definitely get a deal done there. Next up, you have Sean Walker from the LA Kings. The Kings aren't willing to give up on Walker quite yet, coming off a torn ACL and MCL, but there's no doubt the clock is ticking. They've got another right shot defenseman in Jordan Spence at 21, who right now is better than Walker and biding his time in AHL Ontario. Spence is ready and able to step up into the lineup now, and Walker makes them 3 times the money in the NHL, playing third pair of minutes. Los Angeles has a glut on defense. They are in an inevitable training position, armed with more prospects and picks than they need as they chase down a second straight playoff appearance. Walker makes a lot of sense, and that defense has definitely become a little bit crowded. Spence, of course, played last season. I was really impressed by what he was doing last year. I don't think he should be an AHL player whatsoever. He'd be an NHL player on almost every other NHL team, but the LA Kings just have so much depth there. So I could definitely see a Walker trade, and especially with that cap hit, 2.65 for another season too. I don't think LA is going to be wanting that for too much longer. Then, of course, at number 10, you got Erik Karlsson with the San Jose Sharks. File it under the news, but not news category when Sharks GM Mike Rear said last week that he'd be willing to listen to offers on Karlsson. What rebuilding GM is slamming the phone down if a team is willing to take a $11.5 million deal off your books? For that reason, moving Karlsson will be one of the most complicated transactions in league history. Either by space available or need, you can count the number of fits on a couple of fingers. But the Sharks likely won't want to retain and be handcuffed, leaving only one retained transaction left available. But they're probably going to have to in order to make it happen. If they can convince Karlsson to waive too, it's a mess. And right now, it's a decided long shot. So interesting news on there at Karlsson, and it makes sense, especially with his current situation. It's just the cap hit, really. Like if he was making $6 million, that deal would be, I think, done already at this point. But that $11.5 million, even if you have to retain 50%, that's the thing. The Sharks don't want to do that. They don't want to be strapped for that much longer. 4 more seasons after this, that's still a long time, even if the Sharks are going to go full rebuild. But it's just, especially to retain that, they would want to get even more, and that just kind of lessens the field on the Erik Karlsson front. So although it would be, I think, ideal for Karlsson to go to a different team, he definitely has a lot to give to a different team. I still think there's a better chance that he stays with San Jose just because those that cap situation. Then we got Jack Roslovic with the Columbus Blue Jackets at 11. Gavrikov at 8 for what a disaster has been for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And you see as well with Roslovic's stats, 6 points in 15 games. It is not fitting well right now with Columbus. So I would definitely expect to see a Jack Roslovic trade just to get a new change of scenery because it's obvious it ain't working right now. Then at number 12, there's Nick Jensen from the Washington Capitals. I think a pretty interesting one. If the Capitals are still outside the playoff race, I could definitely see that. But I also feel like there's a chance that even if Washington is like 500 by the trade deadline, they might still keep, maybe even still try to buy at the deadline because I don't think the Capitals will want to trade anybody out unless they really need to. At 13, there's Andreas Athanasiou with the Blackhawks, another player that makes a lot of sense, a good depth piece, and so far 8 points in 18 games has played pretty fine, so I would expect to see that. You got Shane Gostisbehere at 14, pending UFA, 4.5 million AAV. Definitely one of the most likely guys to be dealt for Arizona, and one of the guys that has the most value for them right now. Absolutely. I mean, he's been great in his time with the Coyotes, especially leaving the Flyers. So I could see a T. I mean, personally for me, if I'm going for pending UFA guys, I mean, Shane Gostisbehere I think would cost a lot less than a John Klingberg, for instance. So I think there might be teams that don't go after Klingberg, they go after Gostisbehere and go after a guy that can still move the puck quite well, can still score a ton of goals and get it done to the power play, especially. I mean, 10 points in 17 games with the Coyotes is nothing to laugh at. So I could see a lot of teams going after him. At 15, we got James Reimer. I love to see that. I'm really hoping Reimer goes to a contending team because he deserves it. You see a 906 save percentage in 14 games. A lot of potential there. And I think he's one of the more underrated goaltenders in the NHL right now. Absolutely. And I'm really hoping that by the time the trade deadline is over, he's a starter somehow for some team because I think he deserves it. At 16, there's Brock Boeser with the Vancouver Canucks. Interesting name. I mean, you see this year, he finally got his first couple of goals this last week, but 12 points in 13 games. Canucks president Jim Rutherford said if this season continues to swirl down the drain, they'll be forced to unload larger contracts. Outside of pending UFA Horvat, number one, Boeser is perhaps most movable of those deals. He certainly hasn't scored at his typical rate this season, but his contract isn't hugely detrimental to his value. Boeser started slow and finished stronger last season with 29 points in 43 games. And I'll just say, if Brock Boeser was another deal that happens at the trade deadline, it would be absolutely wild. Another player that I think just has so much more to give and just doesn't feel like he's a great fit for this Canucks team anymore, unfortunately. Then you got Max Domi, another player for the Blackhawks. Makes sense. Another guy that's a pending UFA. And definitely, I would say Max Domi is even more likely than Athanasiou just for the profile he has and how likely the Blackhawks are going to be able to get that deal done. I am fearing what that Blackhawks lineup will look like after the trade deadline because you trade Kane, Toews, Domi, and Athanasiou. That's pretty much everybody. So we'll see how much the Blackhawks really unload. At number 18, there's Ryan Reaves of the New York Rangers. Reaves has been a healthy scratch in 4 of the Rangers' last 5 games. The belief in New York isn't looking for much in return to gain the salary cap flexibility, and there are more than just a couple of teams. Edmonton looking for a little size and bite in their bottom 6 forward groups. So potentially the Oilers going after Reaves. That would be interesting. At number 19, we got Sean Monahan of the Montreal Canadiens. Really good one there. What a great story Monahan has been, rehabbing from a significant hip surgery last April that cost him a proper send-off in Calgary. The Flames were forced to cough up a 2025 first-round pick to get him out from under that contract. The contract makes trade more difficult, but Monahan could be an ideal third-line center pickup for a playoff team and a boon of an asset swing for Canadiens GM Kent Hughes and co. And it just gets me excited with how Monahan has done this year. I mean, you get like a 3rd-round pick, and that's still amazing value after getting a 1st-round pick for him just this last offseason. Kent Hughes is a magician, man. I'll just keep saying it. Number 20, Kasperi Kapanen. This one also makes a lot of sense. Of all the term handed out by GM Ron Hextall last summer, the extra year to Kapanen might be the most painful at the moment in time. Kapanen has struggled. His warts, incomplete, and effort are there for all to see. And he's not an inexpensive contract to offload given the circumstances, as Hextall has been one of the most active GMs out there trying to find a landing spot for him. So that makes a lot of sense. You can see 5 points, only 1 goal in 13 games this year, has gotten scratched a couple of times, 3.2 million AAV. Just brutal, man. I remember when they signed the Kapanen deal and let Evan Rodrigues go to Colorado, and I kind of knew it was going to be a mistake back at that point. I didn't think it would be this much of a mistake. I didn't think Kapanen would play this horribly, but it's just been awful. And the fact that there's another year left on the contract, Ron Hextall really did a good job with that one. But there you go. That is the top 20 trade targets from Frank Seravalli. A lot of interesting names here. I mean, players like Timo Meier, Brock Boeser, a lot of unique ones in here, and a lot of potential big names for the 2023 trade deadline. But let us know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this list? What do you agree? What do you disagree with? Which players on this list do you see getting traded? Where do you think they could go? Let us know all your thoughts. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for more content just like this. And share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Oh, wait, no. Click on this card as well for all the hockey trade rumor content right in one playlist. That will be it, though. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.